Hi, this is Eric Martin with Board Game Geek. I'm here today looking at the Quacksalber von Quedlinburg, designed by Wolfgang Warsch, published by Schmidt Spiele in early 2018. This design is now nominated for the Kennerspiel des Jahres Award, which goes to enthusiast or connoisseur games, the description of which means slightly more involved than family mainstream games. Maybe there's a rules hurdle, things you have to figure out before you can start playing, or games with slightly more involved strategic rules that might flummox a newbie. So the title of the game follows the standard German rule of naming, which might be an actual law for all I know, given how consistent these names are, where you must either have an historic place in the title or some form of wordplay with puns, or in this case, alliteration. And this has both, because Quedlinburg is a town in the middle of Germany, founded in the 9th century, and it is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site because the downtown area, which is depicted here on the box, is one of the best preserved medieval towns in Germany, having not been affected by World War II. So if you want to go to the town and see these medieval buildings with these wood structures across the front, you can go do that. However, you do not want to go see a doctor while you are there, because Quacksalber is the German word for quack, phony doctors, and we use the same thing in English. And in this game, you are going to be a quack. Yes, you get to sit around just... No, you don't do that. You can if you want. Other people will hate you. You are a phony doctor, and you must create potions, throwing ingredients into your pot. In medieval times, you got this pot, you're brewing up something, and you hope not to bubble over, but make something fabulous by throwing in lots of ingredients that will have all sorts of effects. Let's see how this works. Here are most of the components in the game. Each player has their own pot where they're going to be brewing potions, so you take these and pass them out to the different players. You start with a flask on your board, you have a ruby, you have a drop to signify where you are starting to add things to your pot. You have a rat to be explained later. And each person has a bag that is going to start with the ingredients that's shown here, where you have these white tokens which represent snowberries. They have 4 value 1, 2 value 2, 1 value 3, and an orange and green of value 1. This bag is the heart of the game. Everyone starts with the same 9 ingredients, and over the course of 9 rounds, you will add additional ingredients to your bag, and then draw from that bag each round to brew a potion in order to gain more money to buy ingredients, as well as victory points to show that you are an awesome quack. Now, to focus on this, which is what you should care about most, I'm going to skip a few things at the start of the first round. When you draw ingredients from the bag, you can just focus on your own pot right now and don't worry about anyone else. You draw an ingredient from the bag, you look at the number on it, and you count that many spaces from your drop or from your last chip. If I draw a 1, it goes 1 space from the drop. I draw another 3, so 1, 2, 3. And you're filling up your pot this way, so obviously higher numbers get you farther along the path. And that's good, because the farther you go along the path, the more money you'll earn, and the more points you'll earn. However, we got 3, 2, 1. There's a problem here in that if you have snowberries, the white chips, that add up to more than 7, your pot overflows, and you have to stop for the round and you lose some bonuses. It's important to remember that only the numbers on the white snowberry tokens count when you're trying to consider whether you overflow for the round. Everything else doesn't matter, so the more that you can dilute your bag with other ingredients, the better in terms of you being able to draw something that you can use during the round. When you look at what I have in my pot already, my snowberry tokens add up to 6. I can draw a 2 and overflow, or I can draw anything else and not overflow. So let's see what I get. I get a 1. My total is exactly 7. As long as I don't go over 7, then I don't overflow. And now only the orange 1 will let me not overflow. And I've got a 1 in 4 chance of drawing that, so I'll stop for the round. Initially, you want to focus only on your own pot. Play the odds in terms of how far you want to press your luck, drawing tokens from the bag, paying attention to your white snowberry total, and figuring out when you want to stop. There are reasons to push further along the track, and there are reasons to stop as well. But you don't have to worry about other people until you get near the end of the game, and especially in the final round when it becomes much more important. And at that point, you'll want to draw from the bag at the same time. 1, 2, 3, stir. You're stirring your pot and adding something to the bag, or pulling out an empty hand and saying, I'm done. Once you've stopped for the round, or you've overflowed, which has forced you to stop, you look and see the space which is just beyond the chip that you most recently added. There's a green number up top, and that tells you how much money you get in the round to buy tokens. There might be a number on the wood plaque, and that tells you how many victory points you can get, and there may or may not be a ruby depicted in that space. Whoever has gone farthest along the path, and the highest you can get is here, 35 money and 15 points. Whoever's gone farthest along gets to roll this bonus die and get a reward, as long as they did not overflow. If you overflow, you cannot be considered for the award because you are cleaning up your space. You cannot get a bonus. Pick up your mess. So you roll the die and you get some bonus, 1 or 2 victory points. Maybe you get another pumpkin to add to your bag. Maybe you get a ruby, or perhaps you get to push your drop ahead. So in future rounds, you're going to start 1 additional space along the path. And the farther you can push that ruby, the better in future rounds, because you will get farther and farther along the path. So that's one reason why you want to press your luck, or not. You get bonuses if you're the farthest along the path, but haven't overflowed. Each round continues along the same path as shown on this round board. You first determine who gets to roll the bonus die, which might be multiple people if they're tied. You get bonuses for the black, green, and purple chips in your pot. We'll get to those bonuses later. If you have a ruby exposed on your path, as is the case here, you get a ruby and add it to your bag. We'll explain those later as well. You get victory points based on where you are on the path, and you get money to buy things. However, if you have overflowed for the round, you get either points or money, not both. And this is the second reason why you pay attention to how far you want to press your luck. After scoring points for the round, moving your point marker along the track, or not, if you overflowed, you now go shopping with whatever money you have, starting with that round's start player. And the things you're going to buy are shown on these placards here, with pumpkins or mushrooms or beetles, crow's head, death head's moth, or 2 other things which are added to the game at later rounds. The cost for buying something is shown on the chart here. You can buy a pumpkin for 3. A pumpkin only has a value of 1. It does nothing except move you 1 space along the path. Maybe you want to buy a pumpkin because it's cheap. Sounds like a maxim to live by. Although pumpkins don't do anything on their own, they do if you combine them with the mushrooms. The mushrooms come in values of 1, 2, and 4. They cost 6, 10, and 16. You cannot buy a 16 until you get a little later in the game. And if you draw a red token after you have 1 or 2 pumpkins in your pot, then that red token goes 1 space more than it does normally. So instead of going 1, 2, or 4 spaces, it goes 2, 3, or 5 spaces. If you have 3 or more pumpkins, it goes an additional 2 spaces. Mushrooms and pumpkins have a symbiotic relationship. I did not realize that. You start with a green 1 token, and you can buy additional tokens in values of 1, 2, and 4 for $4, $8, and $14, or bubbles in this sense. Bubbles are your currency. And if the green chip is last or next to last in your row from what you draw, if we had this instead of this, or here, if the green is last or next to last, you get a ruby. So a little conditional on whether you actually get a bonus or not from the green, but it is cheaper than the red. So something to consider. The blue tokens, sort of a fortune telling or look ahead. Again, they come in values 1, 2, and 4. They cost 5, 10, 19. When you draw a blue chip from your bag, you then draw 1, 2, or 4 chips from your bag, depending on the number on the blue chip. So if I draw 4 chips from my bag, I now can take one of those chips and add it to my pot, and then I throw everything else back in the bag. So if I draw a blue off a blue, I can then draw again. Put that in there, I draw 1 thing out. Oh, I draw red too. Sure, I'll do that. Let's assume this is later in the game, as I'm giving examples of what you're drawing because you don't have this stuff in your bag right now. For 10, you can buy a death's head moth, which comes in value only 1 and has different effects depending on whether you have 2 or 3 or 4 players in the game. With 2 players, if you have as many black tokens as the other player, then you each move your droplet ahead 1 space. If you have more than the other guy, you get a ruby as well. With 3 and 4 players, if you beat both of your neighbors, looking left and right, You get to move your drop and get a ruby. If you beat only one of them, you get your drop. Interactivity in the game is light. You have two main aspects to that. One is each round where you're trying to press your luck and push farther ahead and have more money and have more points to be farther along the path and get to roll that bonus die in order to compound that reward for you already being farther ahead. Although, of course, you risk losing it all, or a big portion of it, if you do overflow your pot. The other element is the Black Death's Head Moth, where you're trying to outdo the other players in order to get a reward there and push your drop along. And the farther you can push that drop along, the better in terms of getting future rewards for being farther down the path. Looking at my options for what to buy, you don't have that many choices when you have only 9 money available, but I can buy a pumpkin for 3, I can buy a red one for 6, which is 9, and I throw those tokens into my bag along with everything else that I have in my pot already. The last part of the round, if you have 2 rubies in your bag, you can pay them to move your drop ahead or to refill your flask. I didn't mention the flask earlier, but we can do that now. If you want, after you place a white snowberry chip into your pot, you can choose to drink your flask and throw that back in the bag. In addition to adding more tokens to your bag, having the flask available is another way to mitigate risk. Because if you draw a white snowberry from the bag and you don't like the looks of it because it's bringing you up to the brink of overflowing, or even if you draw the 3 on the first turn, that's up to you, you can drink that flask and throw the token back in the bag. It's still there waiting for you, but hopefully you're going to mix around and draw something else. If you overflow, however, you cannot use the flask. Again, clean up your mess. You can spend 2 rubies as often as you wish to advance your drop along the track or to refill your flask, although you can do that only once. And then you pass the deck of event cards to the next player and begin the next round. Deck of event cards? Yes, the very thing I have in my hand that I knew all about and was only feigning surprise at because I was waiting for this moment to tell you about it. Because again, the heart of the game is drawing stuff from the bag and seeing what comes out in your pot. But at the start of each of the 9 rounds, you draw an event card from the deck. And if you get a purple card, it has an immediate effect. If you have a blue card, it changes the rules for the round. So it could be something simple, like whoever has the fewest rubies, which could be more than one player, gets a ruby. Okay, that's easy. Or everyone gets a choice. Do you want a black chip? Or do you want a 2 chip of a color of your choice? Or do you want 3 rubies? Roll the die. Maybe everyone gets to roll the die and see what they get. Those are some of the immediate benefits you might have. And then you might have something that changes over the round. So if your pot overflows, then your left-hand neighbor gets a 2 chip of their choice. Puts the onus on you if you give them a benefit or not. Or the first white chip you draw, you can throw it back in the bag. Or the overflow level rises to 9 this round. Or something along those lines. You could double the rat number, which leads us to the second thing that happens in the round, the other thing I have not told you about. If you look at the scoring track, you'll notice that there are a number of rat tails that cross the path. And after you draw the event card for the round, you count the number of rat tails between you, wherever you are, and the leader. So you may count that number, maybe you get 2 rat tails. On your pot, before you start drawing things from the round, you take your rat and you place it 2 spaces ahead. And so this round you will get a small benefit. You threw some rat tails into the pot to get you started, and you'll start a little bit ahead, and maybe you will go farther than the person who's currently in the lead. This is a catch-up mechanism for those who are behind. Obviously, if you're in the lead, you are 0 rat tails behind yourself. You get no bonus. However, you have probably earned more money, because money and points kind of go hand in hand as you're advancing through the pot, and you already probably have a better bag than those other people. And what's interesting is I've played this game 7 times now on a review copy from Schmidt with 2, 3, and 4 players, and the first 3 games I played, the same player was in the lead for 8 rounds and then was overtaken in the final round by the other person, all in a 2-player game. So leader, loss, leader, loss. Same thing with me being on both ends of that. And I was really wondering whether this is going to be always the case. And it is not. The catch-up mechanism varies a lot as you play multiple games and you see it in practice with different people and different player counts. And different personalities for people who want to press their luck a lot or just ride the bonus. And sometimes you cannot come back from the bonus. Scott, BDG, the owner, was 9 rat tails behind him. He did not catch up. No, you can get too far behind if you continually bust as you're pulling and overflowing your pot. Let's introduce the last 2 colors in this game. In round 2, you add the yellow chips to the market of things you can buy. And if you pull a yellow chip immediately after drawing a white chip, you place the yellow chip in your pot like normal, and then you take that white chip that was just before it and throw it back in your bag. So you're farther along the path, but with a lower total. That's pretty good. The final chip type that comes into play is the purple, or lilac, as they call it in the rules. And they cost 9, they only come with a value of 1, and you get a bonus depending on how many you have in your pot at the end of a round. So if you have 1, you get 1 point. If you got 2, you get a point and a ruby, or 2 points and you move your drop. The difficulty, of course, is that you can only buy 1 chip of a color each round. So the earliest you can buy a purple is round 3. The earliest you can get 3 purple is round 5. So how many chances are you actually going to have to get these purple chips? Well, maybe you just buy it extra. Maybe you get an event card that gives you the purple as a reward, or maybe you just like going for the fences and saying, heck, maybe I can just do it and get 10 points off my purple by drawing all these purple every round. The Quacksalber is all about playing the odds, trying to do the best that you can with the bag that you build, but of course you don't know what's going to be coming out of it. Ideally, you pair up the orange and the red, you put all those together and you draw lots of orange and then zoom ahead when you draw the red. But if they turn around the other order, you're cursing everything. You might chain from a blue into a blue into a blue and just flower ahead. And I've seen that happen. Or it doesn't work and you have a blue and then you just draw like 3 white and a yellow and I don't know, it's not really worth it. You throw them all back in the bag and you just draw one of those again and pointless. Or the yellow is awesome at the beginning of the game because you have a very good odds of drawing a yellow after a white, or at least better odds than you do later in the game once you've started diluting your bag, and it's very likely that you will draw anything other than white before you draw a yellow. So the turns vary a lot. And what's funny is if you look at the other games that Wolfgang Warsch has come out with in 2018, amazingly enough, he's had 4 games published. We had Ganz schön clever, we had The Mine, and we had Illusion. Now Illusion is a good game, but it's not like the other 3. Well, for one thing, it's not nominated for a Spiel des Jahres or a Kennerspiel des Jahres. It's a good game. Timeline with Colors is the short description. But if you look at these 3 games and what they have in common, what's funny is on the surface, they look completely different. This one is all about pushing your luck. This is a cooperative game about playing cards together. This is a dice rolling combo game where you try to get lots of points. But they all have the same DNA. They all feel the same as you're playing them in that the game design facilitates these magic moments where it feels like the impossible happened. In the mind, it's playing cards in sequential order. 67, 68. Oh, so close. If we played him the other way, we would have failed and lost a life and the game would have ended and blah. But this feels like, it feels good. And Ganz schön clever is the same thing, where you get a blue roll that lets you get an orange, that lets you get something else off that, and then the next roll gets you the yellow that finishes the row, and blah, 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 and you chain all these things together, and it gives you the opportunity to make these clever moves, and you feel like you've done really cool things. Quacksalber works the same way. Some rounds are gonna bomb, and you're gonna have someone who draws 4 tokens, which I've seen, and overflows. 1, 3, 2, 2. You're at 8 and you're done. You have almost nothing. You scored no money, no points. It's hopeless. And against that person in that round, I think I drew 15 chips or something. Something awesome. And it felt really good. And you get those magic moments where things do chain together. You get the pumpkins and then you just red after that, and the blue, and you chain them together, and the yellow after the white. And it's these real feel-good moments, which of course is kind of the randomness of the game, making that happen. And sure, you made choices on when you're going to play cards, or what dice you're going to keep, or what bonuses you're going to get when you do the dice, or what chips you're going to buy. But there's also tons of randomness in the design as well. And that's kind of this weird magical merging of this design with the chance and the ability for you as the player to make choices and have these magic moments. It's kind of amazing to see that spread across 3 games that now all have been nominated for awards in Germany, or the same award in one case, where these two are competing against each other to see who might win Kennerspiel des Jahres against Heaven and Ale, which is a very different, more strategic game with low randomness other than tiles coming out in the round and the order and placement of those tiles as you're competing against other people. But you're not chaining things together. You see everything that's out there for the round in Heaven and Ale, and then you sort of make a plan, and hopefully it works out against what the opponent's doing. And in this game, there's randomness all the time in terms of what people are doing and what you're going to get out of the bag. And it's great fun watching other people. Now, I mentioned how in the last round, you should be drawing simultaneously. You're supposed to not see that someone else has stopped and then you decide to keep going because you know you can beat them now because they've stopped. You're supposed to draw it together and then, whoop, I'm done. Or you overflow, and you see that. And when you look at the scores that people have, you know the score that you're trying to beat if you're behind. Or you know how much someone else is earning if you are ahead. And that's going to drive your decision of whether to keep going or not. And so it's this weird lottery pull, right? You're pulling the lever and just seeing what's coming out here, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm still ahead. I'm still, I'm going to get a ruby off this. I'm going to do something, and how does that change that calculation? You don't even have to play out the final round so much, because in the final round, you're not buying any chips. All you're doing is you're taking your bubbles, and every 5 bubbles or dollars that you have is worth a point. So ideally you don't overflow and you get points like normal, and then your money is points, and every 2 rubies is a point, and you add all that up. And you can see all that in the final draw. What do you have? What do I have? And are we going to keep drawing or not? And it becomes this little shoving match between whether we're going to keep going or not. And what's funny is in the earlier rounds of the game, you don't have to do this. You can just look at your own pot, right? Just focus. You put on the blinders, you figure out what you want to do, and maybe keep going or not. But I've also played different games where we watch what each other is doing, and we see that someone stops, and I say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to draw one more. And then I do. I go ahead of that person. Oh, I'm going to draw one more. And it becomes a much more interesting and fluid situation. I like that a lot better, where you have that sort of interaction, the flowing interaction between someone. I don't know if you necessarily want to do that in the final round, but it's lots of fun just to have that back and forth between someone, right? This little shoving match. We're trying to push them down, and so hopefully you don't end the game and you get that bonus roll and you get more and push ahead of them in line. So there's an overview of Quacksalber. I think I covered everything, at least everything that you need to know. It's all about the bag. Wait, I did forget something. Modern design principle that runs through a lot of games that we see on the market today, and that is embedded variability in the game itself. And not just due to you drawing tokens from the bag or the die roll or the event cards, which already is providing a lot of variability in how games are going to be carried out. Not to mention just you pushing your luck, and sometimes you bust and sometimes you go far. No. There's even more than that, because you have the colored tiles with the effects of the different colored chips, and they're double-sided. So on the back of this, you're going to have completely different powers that you can use. So instead of set 1, you use set 2. And now the red, instead of being tied to pumpkins, when you draw a red, you set it beside your board. And after you stop, whether you overflow or not, you decide for each red token on the side of your board whether you add it to your pot or not. Oh, was I behind by 2? I'll add my red 4. And now I'm ahead, and now I get the bonus, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. If you don't, or they just sit on the side and you decide to use them when you want. I actually wanted to spend 26 this round, not 25. So let me drop this other one on the board. Or green bonus. If the green is last or next to last, get a token depending on the value of the green. Or the blue, if you draw a blue 4 and you explode in the next 4 chips you pull out, you still get money and points. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. Or yellow. when I place a yellow, the next token, I move twice as far, whatever that is. So I'm gambling again. What's more is there's another set. There's a third set. There's a fourth set. And of course, you can use them all together, or you can vary them and just shuffle and take one of each color and figure out what you want to do. Not to mention that on the other side of your pot, there's another pot. So there's more variability here, where you not only have the droplet in the middle of your pot, you also have a droplet on the bottom. And each time you advance a droplet, you decide whether you want to advance it in your pot, so you get farther along the path each round, or you want to advance this one and you'll get an immediate bonus. Maybe you'll get a certain chip, you'll get a ruby, you'll get some points, and you can advance along here. So it depends on what you want. It's a variability that doesn't necessarily change the gameplay that much, or at least it doesn't, the drop one does not really change it that much, but it just adds a little twist. Any one of these designs could have been the game, and now you have all of them. You just throw them all in the box. And I played 7 times, again on a review copy, 1 game with set 2, all the others were with set 6. And they played out differently depending on the players and the player count and how we do things and so forth. So I have way, way, way more to go in this game in terms of what's possible, in terms of seeing what comes out of the bag.